Pete Hegseth is woefully unfit for the job of Secretary of Defense. For Mr. Hegseth, yesterday's hearing was an exercise in obfuscation. When confronted about the serious accusations against his character, Mr. Hegseth repeatedly dismissed them as smear tactics, but refused to respond to how these character issues impact for his qualifications for the job. When asked if being guilty of sexual assault is disqualifying for the job of Secretary of Defense, Mr. Hegseth refused to answer. Imagine if any other American interviewing for any other job refused to answer that question. Clearly, more information is needed about Hegseth's background. But when Democrats asked to make Mr. Hegseth's full FBI background documents available to all members of the committee, the Republican chair said no. Why? Why is the Republican chair insistent on keeping relevant information about Mr. Hegseth locked away from committee members? Perhaps the reason for Republican stonewalling is that Perhaps the reason for Republican stonewalling is that the more evidence that's revealed about Mr. Hegseth, the more obvious it will become that he is woefully unfit for the job. For Mr. Hegseth, when there are serious allegations, to not answer them directly and instead just call them smear tactics, especially in such an important job like Secretary of Defense where people's lives are on the line, is just totally unacceptable, totally inadequate, and basically an important nominee, or nominee for a very important position, just ducking the most important questions he faced. Now let me say a few things about why these hearings are so important for our country and to our side. By all indication, our Republican colleagues seem perfectly comfortable with advancing Mr. Hegseth through the Senate, despite his lack of qualifications. Many of our colleagues have private doubts about the nominees, but publicly they are still willing to embrace them. Donald Trump's hold on Senate Republicans has become very powerful. Nevertheless, we Democrats will continue to push and pressure and scrutinize each nominee in committee because it's so important to get them on record. Americans need to see that many of Donald Trump's nominees are simply unfit for the jobs they've been chosen for. Americans need to hear these nominees answer for Donald Trump's harmful policies. And if some of these nominees are severely unqualified, and many of them are, these hearings are essential for exposing that even if they get confirmed in the end, the information must come out. Even if they are exposed, even if they get confirmed, it is so important to have all these questions asked and see what the answers or lack of answers are. If the time comes months from now that some of Donald Trump's cabinet members fail on the job, these hearings will have served as an important warning for the American people to see. That's why Democrats are committed to ensuring each nominee is vetted thoroughly and scrutinized during the testimony. On Mr. Vote. And one other point, by the way, on why we think the hearings are important. The hearings are also an opportunity to show whose side each party is on. Are these nominees in favor of tax cuts for very wealthy people? Are they in favor of keeping programs that help working class people keep prices down, such as making sure that Medicare can negotiate drug prices, which brings down the price for everybody? Where do they stand? The hearings glaringly show that Donald Trump and his nominees are on the side of the very powerful, and that we Democrats who are asking the questions are on the side of working people. And as the hearings wind through and we go through more and more witnesses, it'll become clearer and clearer to the American people who is on whose side. So it's important to have a record of these nominees, even if they get confirmed in the end, to see who they are and to guard against the dangers that might occur with them in office, and to show who is on whose side.
What we just watched from Senator Schumer wasn't theater. It was a fundamental question about fitness, candor, and the basic obligations of democratic oversight. When someone is being considered for Secretary of Defense, we're not talking about a routine hire. We're talking about a civilian who will be entrusted with shaping defense policy, managing a department with millions of service members and civilian employees, handling highly classified intelligence, and advising the president on matters where lives, global stability, and the credibility of the United States are at stake. That's why character, judgment, and transparency aren't optional. They're essential. So why did Schumer call the hearing an exercise in obfuscation? Because instead of answering direct, consequential questions, the nominee used deflection, labeling allegations as smears, refusing yes or no answers on whether being guilty of sexual assault would be disqualifying, and declining to allow the committee full access to his FBI background materials. Those are classic avoidance tactics. They don't reassure anyone. They don't illuminate the record. They do the opposite. They create doubt where the public and the Senate need clarity. Let's unpack why that matters in concrete terms. Vetting for top national security roles is a multi-layered process for a reason. Background investigations collect financial records, foreign contacts, criminal histories, past employment, interviews with acquaintances, and other data that test both integrity and vulnerability. Committees don't ask for those files out of prurient curiosity. They ask because past behavior, hidden legal entanglements, or risky associations can compromise a person's judgment or expose them to leverage. If a nominee resists making those materials available even to committee members, it prevents lawmakers from doing their constitutional duty to advise and consent with full information. There is also a moral and operational dimension to the specific question Schumer raised, whether a proven or admitted sexual assaulter is disqualified from leading the Defense Department. For many Americans and for countless service members who serve under extreme conditions, that's not a speculative point. It's about trust and command climate. The leader of the Pentagon must be able to represent and defend the men and women who serve. A history of misconduct or a refusal to confront such allegations honestly undermines the moral authority needed to lead. Saying we should wait for due process is one thing. Refusing to answer whether proven sexual violence disqualifies someone is another. Confirmation hearings exist to test exactly that kind of judgment. There's a procedural argument that sometimes comes up. Privacy, grand jury secrecy, or national security sensitivity can limit what's publicly released. Those are legitimate limits in specific circumstances. That's why SMART proposals typically strike a balance, provide the committee with unredacted materials under secure conditions while protecting victim identities and genuinely sensitive information. The point of Schumer's request was not to publish everything to the world without care, but to ensure committee members could review the full picture in a secure setting. Blocking that access raises the obvious question: why hide it? We should also consider the broader institutional consequences. Confirmation hearings create a public record. If nominees evade questions now, their evasions become part of the historical record. And if failures occur later in office, the record helps the public understand what warnings were ignored. Worse, a pattern of confirming ill-vetted, partisan loyalists erodes confidence in the institutions that rely on professional competence and nonpartisan stewardship. Allies watch how we vet leaders. Adversaries size up our judgment. A weak or compromised civilian leader of the Department of Defense does not only risk internal morale, it affects deterrence, alliances, and decision-making in crises. Finally, this is also a political reality check. Schumer pointed to a dynamic many voters will recognize. Party loyalty, pressure from a president, and raw political calculus can sometimes override careful assessment. That's why oversight matters. It's not about scoring points. It's about protecting the country from avoidable risk. Senators who claim to value national security and service members have to explain why they voted to move a nominee forward despite unanswered, serious questions. What can viewers do? Pay attention. Hearings matter more than sound bites. Call or email your senators and ask them to demand full, secure access to background files for major national security nominees and to press nominees for direct answers on issues of character and fitness. When you reach out, be clear and specific. Tell your senator that the Department of Defense needs leaders whose judgment and integrity are beyond reasonable doubt, and that committee members need full access to vetting materials under secure conditions. Share reputable reporting. Support survivor for advocacy groups that press for accountability, and hold elected officials to their commitments on transparency and oversight. At the end of the day, this isn't just procedural nitpicking. It's about whether the people we entrust with our security are worthy of that trust. If nominees dodge the essential questions that go to competence and character, the public deserves to know why. If you believe in rigorous, nonpartisan vetting for positions that matter to every American, make your voice heard, contact your senators, demand transparency, and stay engaged. If you found this breakdown useful, share it so others understand why these hearings matter, and subscribe for more careful, evidence-based explanations of how government decisions affect our lives.